So we can have quorum so that we can pass the bills we have on our calendar this morning. So we'll just stand at ease. Got on the agenda one resolution and one House bill, and since we do not have a quorum yet of voting members, we also have a presentation by Don Clark for the State Veterans Cemetery in Augusta. So is Don here? Oh, if you'd like to come up to the table, and we'll just go and let you do your presentation while we're waiting on others to get here before we get to the voting. Oh, that's fine. That's fine. Yes, sir. And we did get your packet that you sent, and we can put that in everybody's folders. And the floor is yours.
All right. Good morning. Wanted to take the time to make a presentation before the committee. Thank you all for having us here today. Also wanted to introduce Augusta-Richmond County Commissioner Tony Lewis, who also will be representing Augusta-Richmond County's support of the cemetery. So I wanted to give him the opportunity to speak on the city's support, and then I'll carry the rest forward from there.
Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, Chairman Payne and the rest of the senators. Today is a very important day for Augusta-Richmond County. I say that because we're here to support the Veterans Cemetery in Augusta, Georgia. My son served in Afghanistan. He's currently a veteran. And it's very important that we support this initiative of bringing a veteran cemetery to Augusta-Richmond County for a couple of reasons. The closest veteran cemetery to Augusta is in Milledgeville, and the next closest is in Columbia, South Carolina. And with the influx of veterans and retired military personnel that makes Augusta, Georgia their home, we think it prudent that we should have a cemetery for veterans and spouses and family members of veterans. So Augusta, Georgia supports this. We've given an initial investment of about $2.3 million to add to this proposal of bringing a veteran cemetery into Augusta-Richmond County. And more importantly, the potential site for said cemetery is in my district. I represent the 6th district of Augusta-Richmond County, and the particular site is in my district. So I come today to tell these esteemed gentlemen here that sits on the committee that we are in full support, Augusta-Richmond County government, on behalf of our mayor and the 10 representatives, my colleagues on the commission. We fully support this initiative and this drive to bring this cemetery to Augusta-Richmond County.
Do you have any idea how many, what the numbers are as far as retired military you have in Augusta?
Yes, sir. Yeah, so collectively, we have about 66,000 collectively. Now, if we include the other regional counties that are outside of Georgia, it's much, much more. We're looking at about 157,000 total. The issue is having a veteran cemetery, or having a military installation that doesn't have a veteran cemetery in closer proximity. We're the only city, the only area in the entire state that doesn't have one in reasonable distance. So that's going to be included in what we kind of clarify and present today. Appreciate you all again giving us the opportunity and time to present.
Okay.
So again, my name's Don Clark. I represent a collective amount of 275 years of service behind me. I have men and women that represent the Vietnam era. I have men and women that represent the Gulf War era. I also have men and women that represent Korean War, Panama, OEF, OIF. And we also have a young lady that's representing a military spouse who also benefits from locating a veteran cemetery. These men and women behind me are only a fraction of the representation of the proud men and women of the Augusta region that will greatly benefit from having a veteran cemetery established here. But I wanted them to stand in solidarity to show their support, but also for us to recognize them for their service to their country.
Let's give them a round of applause.
So Senator Payne, we met probably about a few weeks ago, and I talked to you briefly about the need for us having to reposition our ask for support from the state to establish a veteran cemetery in the Augusta region. Give you a little history lesson. This actually started back as far as 1999. Former Mayor Bob Young, who was my co-chair, who's out with a bum knee. He had a knee replacement, but he's mending well. When he was mayor of Augusta, he made the proposal to establish a veteran cemetery in the Augusta area. At that time, it was going to be located on Fort Gordon. Due to 9/11 activities happening and due to the response of all military installations worldwide being shut down, that was no longer a feasible option, and that plan lay dormant until 2019, when he and I represented this plan to carry forward. Give you a little backstory in history. The intent of applying for a veteran cemetery, whether it be state or national, that process goes through the VA grant cemetery program, VA cemetery grant program, that's conducted by the NCA. The proposal at the time, before we could make the proposal, before we could even get to the point of where we are today, we had to, number one, ensure that our region was in full solidarity and support. We also had to firmly identify and clarify the need. To present anything, you need to make sure that you have a bona fide need supporting whatever proposal you're bringing. Once we establish all of those things, we then traveled the roadways to come and make a presentation before the governor. The governor, of course, had to establish approval of adding another cemetery to the existing inventory of 2. We made that presentation to the governor. He approved, and it then went to the legislators to approve the $1 million to support the application that Georgia Department of Veteran Services submitted for our cemetery. Unfortunately, that process of submitting through that VA cemetery grant program, we'll never get a cemetery if we have to depend on that. We have engaged our federal leaderships from the Senate and from the House to try to get separate appropriation to assist with the funding of this. They couldn't do it. And they couldn't do it because the only line item that the federal government has for appropriations to be approved for a cemetery is through the VA cemetery grant program. Unfortunately, that program is about $200+ million underfunded. We've made that priority list for 3 years, and each year we've made that priority list, our priority number has dropped significantly. We're competing against every city in the United States that's trying to either establish a new cemetery or expand an existing cemetery. For an example, our last submission to try to receive funding for our cemetery, we landed at number 35. There were a total of about 100 or about 85 total submissions. They only had enough funding for maybe the top 8. We were number 35. We weren't going to make it. Total amount, adding up all of the amounts of requests, came up about $295 million. So it put us in a position, once we went back and forth with the senators from, that represent our region and our House representatives, and they found that they had no other vehicle of appropriation to assist this effort. We then had to redirect our ask back to the state to cover the initial costs of establishing the cemetery. Now, what that means is establishing the cemetery means building out the cemetery completely with all of the inventory of buildings, chapel, columbarium, administrative building, the equipment needed, personnel to man and operate, and the initial plots that would put this cemetery in operation. What Commissioner Lewis spoke about earlier with Augusta's support, they came forward to support the effort of demolition of buildings because the site that has been selected has some dilapidated buildings that would have to be demoed prior to any construction to move forward. Also, for the entrance, the other portion of their money would go towards the road widening, improvement, and otherwise to assist the effort. So the $12 million that we're requesting is separate from the 2.3 that Augusta is putting forth to aid and assist the project to moving forward. Now, you all have a few sheets in front of you. One is a fact sheet that we've kind of kept over the years of doing this to give folks more clarity on what's going on with the project. The fact that we have now Fort Eisenhower, previously Fort Gordon. We also have the Army Cyber Command, which relocated to the area, and Georgia NSA are now a part of that military installation. The other aspect is the fact that all of the men and women that either have served on that installation or nationwide or worldwide and have chosen to make their home in Augusta, our numbers are continuously increasing as far as the amount of folks that make Augusta home. And we're saying Augusta, but I want to make sure that we're clear. Augusta, many of you may or may not have heard of the term CSRA, Central Savannah River Area. That's because it's regionally, we count all of the remote areas and rural areas surrounding Augusta. So this is not just a benefit for only Augusta. This is a benefit for the region in its entirety. If you look on the packet that was provided, Ms. Williams, I appreciate you providing the packet as well. There's the site that has been identified for the cemetery is 219 acres of property that have been identified and set aside. We collaborated with State Properties Commission, and they approved the set aside of this property for the cemetery. If you look at the northern portion of the depiction, it's this one right here, that will be what will be included in phase one.
That's the 58 acres?
Correct.
Okay.
That's the 58 acres, and that, of course, will include all of those things that I shared with you all earlier, the admin, the columbarium, the chapel, and so on, and the initial plots. If you pull this picture up, this gives a more clearer depiction of what phase one would be comprised of. Now, assisting us with this has been 2KM Architect Firm. They're located in Augusta. They have done all of the designs and plans for every existing military cemetery that we have in the state inventory right now. So they've been an amazing level of support to us from a technical standpoint, along with Georgia Department of Veterans Services, really giving and aiding in the specifics of what's needed in this process. Now, I want to point out something before I get a little further into this. You all may not have this one in your packet. Do they have this one? Okay. And I'll make sure Ms. Williams provides this. What adds more complexity to the process of going through the VA is this. The VA has a very dated process in how to measure land. And these circles represent a 75-mile radius. And if you fall within that 75-mile radius, then they consider you served. They use a process called as the crow flies. Well, if you can imagine a crow pretty much can travel in ways that I can't. Over water, over mountains, and otherwise. But either way, that is how the VA measures who's served and who's not. According to the VA, we have a very small sliver of folks that are not covered. I mean, you all know the distance from Milledgeville to Augusta and from Columbia to Augusta. It's an hour or more, one way. I want to add something. Milledgeville was established in, 21 years ago. The state, of course, along with the VA, establishes veteran cemeteries for the fundamental need of providing a final resting place for our service members and their families that is honorable and that equally represents the service that they provided to country. Unfortunately, we're the only city in the entire state of Georgia that does not have a veteran cemetery located in closer proximity, in reasonable proximity. An example of that representation, Milledgeville has been established 21 years ago. All of the counties surrounding the Augusta area, there's only been 427 burials in 21 years that represent our area and region. It's a fundamental reason why. The distance is too far. Families are now put in positions to where they're having to incur additional costs to pay for plots for their family member and themselves because we don't have a veteran cemetery that's reasonably positioned for their families to travel to. I think you all understand clearly the point I'm trying to make. We need to balance out the inventory of what we have right now, ensure that we have reasonable access and proximity for our veterans and their families to bury their loved ones, and ensure that we don't have to continue to incur the cost. Because for those that don't know, for service members that have qualified service, there's no cost to be buried in a veteran cemetery. That includes a spouse, and in some cases, that also includes a dependent child. So what we're asking is for the state to grant the proposal of bringing a veteran cemetery to the Augusta area. We're looking for 12 million. Ideally, it would be 11 million because the 1 million has been set aside and moved aside for 3 years. So that will be a total of the 12 million. And with Augusta stepping forward, they'll provide the 2.3 million for the demo and the road widening. So this effort, again, benefits greatly these men and women that's sitting here. I myself also served 21 years, and like many of them, I deployed in military conflict 3 times in Iraq and in Afghanistan. So we come to you all clearly, directly, humbly, asking that you greatly support the effort of locating a veteran cemetery in the Augusta area and stand in solidarity with us to obtain the funding to establish the cemetery. Now, I want to make clear, the cemetery will be a state cemetery, so of course that means Georgia Department of Veteran Services would operate and maintain the cemetery. Commissioner Patricia Ross and her team have done an amazing job of providing a lot of the technical specifics, support and otherwise, and clarifying what it would take from a budget standpoint annually to operate and maintain one, which currently right now ranges between $800,000 to $900,000 annually.
All right, well, thank you, and just said thank you for your service. I don't think I said that to you yet, but you do have a question, Senator McLaurin. Did you have? Oh, I didn't count. I counted wrong.
Thank you, Chairman. Great presentation. Thank you, veterans. Thank you all for being here. For those of us in the audience that may have some affiliation with the Navy, can you point which direction is north on this map? Because we go by different. Seriously though, so in the great presentation, enjoyed it immensely. On the paragraph 5 of the handout, the appropriation made 3 years ago, it estimated at a $10 million project. And then down in paragraph 9, it says the value of the city's contribution is more than 2.3 million. You had mentioned that the cost is 12 total. I assume that's all the development land and everything. Is there a phased approach to this, or do we need to do all the land at one time? Question 1, and then question 2. What is the estimated annual operating expense to maintain everything?
Okay, no problem. So let me clarify. The 10 million that's referenced on the sheet was when we started this. It was estimated at a $10 million project. Inflation, construction costs going up. Talking to Georgia Department of Veteran Services, we had to adjust that to the 12 million tag that I'm talking to you about today. The 2.3, like we said, is for the demolition and for the road widening. Annual costs to run, estimated according to Georgia Department of Veteran Services, runs between $800,000 to $900,000 annually to operate and maintain. That includes personnel costs and operating costs. Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Well, we thank you for being here and thank you for your presentation. And I just, like I said, I know, especially with the number of veterans we have in Georgia, and you know that y'all make up the best and the brightest of our state. And I just, you know, I can't thank you enough for your service. Of course, you know, as a former Army paratrooper, I get it. So. Just want to thank you for being here, and we will continue to look at this as we're going forward, and I hope that we can make some progress in that regard.
All right. Thank you, sir, for your service and anyone else that served on the committee. Again, thank you all for the time.
Thank you.
Do what? All right, now moving on to the business portion of our agenda. You will see SR 527. That is a resolution that we passed, inappropriately passed out of our last committee meeting. And because I was told in good regard that bill had been assigned to this committee, but they can find out it was actually not in this committee when we passed it out of this committee. So I am literally, this is the resolution for a study committee on veteran mental health and housing. And so I would entertain your number 13, Dr. Patrick.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would move due pass to Senate Resolution 527.
I have a motion. I have a second from Senator McLaurin. Any other further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed, like sign. And it passes. Thank you. All right, now we will move on to Representative Thomas, HB 299. And we are looking, we have LC 460540. Is that what you're working from? Oops, say that again.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right, go ahead and present your bill.
Thank you. I'm here to present House Bill 299, LC number 460540. And all this does is add the United States Space Force to the list of military organizations, or military branches. And that's it. Very simple.
Any questions?
U.S. Space Force as a recognized organization.
Senator Steele?
There had to be a question, Representative.
Absolutely. I would expect nothing less.
On a serious note, hard to keep it serious with you. Has there been any discussion on the House side about expansion of any military installations for Space Force in the state of Georgia?
Not that I know of.
I hadn't either. I was just curious if you had.
I wasn't aware. I know they've got a pretty big base down at Port Canaveral,
Right.
But I'm not aware of anything in the state of Georgia.
Okay, so the whole purpose is this just to ensure that when we're referencing everything from active duty to guard, it's all just going to be encompassed and that we've included that?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Easy enough.
Any other questions? Any further discussion?
Yeah, I do have a question. Okay, so,
Senator Anderson.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. So it's just to be recognized in the state of Georgia?
Along with all the other branches, so the Navy's already recognized the Air
Of course I
Force,
serve, so
it's
yeah.
just
But I'm just asking, is it just to recognize it in the state of Georgia? Because if it's a federal entity, this is just to recognize it in the state of Georgia?
Correct. It's
Okay.
to include them in the code along with the other branches of the military.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Do I have, what's the will of the committee? Senator McMurray.
Mr. Chairman, I move the committee do pass the bill.
And just to restate that, that is House Bill 299, LC 460540. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Senator Steele. Any other discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, like sign. And your bill passes.
Semper Supra.
And we have no other business for the committee this morning, so thank you for your attendance, and we will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.